I can't settle for less. Those were the last words Chloe said before she walked out of Leo's life and straight into his stepbrother's arms. She didn't whisper them. She didn't look away. She said them standing in the doorway of the apartment they'd shared for 3 years, her lawyer already waiting in the car outside. Leo stood there in sweatpants and an old Columbia architecture t-shirt, holding the divorce papers she'd just signed. His hands were shaking. Not from anger, from the kind of shock that makes your body forget how to work. Outside, rain hammered against the windows of their Boston brownstone, the kind of October rain that sounds like static, like white noise, like the end of something. Silas, Leo's stepbrother, appeared behind her then, one hand resting on the small of her back, proprietary, confident. He wore a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Leo made in a month. His stepbrother, the golden child from his father's second marriage, the one who'd inherited the family real estate empire while Leo got nothing but a last name and a lifetime of comparisons. "Take care of yourself, man," Silas said. Not mocking, worse, pitying. Then they were gone. The door clicked shut. Leo heard her heels on the stairs, heard the car door, heard his entire world collapse into silence. If you've ever been left for someone better, drop a comment. Because what happened next changed everything. 2 weeks earlier, Leo had been on top of the world. Or at least he thought he was. He'd just pitched his biggest proposal yet to the Harborview Development Committee, a mixed-use waterfront complex that would redefine Boston's skyline, sustainable materials, affordable housing integrated with luxury condos. It was everything he'd dreamed of since grad school. Chloe had been there at the presentation, sitting in the back row. He'd caught her eye once during his pitch, and she'd smiled, or he thought she had. Later, he'd realized she was already planning her exit. The committee rejected his proposal the next day. Too ambitious, they said, too expensive, not enough established credibility. The senior partner at his firm, a man named Gerald Rothstein, who'd been in the business for 40 years, pulled Leo aside after the meeting. "You've got talent, kid. But talent doesn't build skyscrapers. Money does. Connections do. And right now, you've got neither." Leo had gone home that night ready to regroup, ready to fight harder. He'd walked in and found Chloe's suitcases by the door, packed, zipped, final. She'd been planning it for months, he'd later learn. Meeting Silas at family gatherings Leo had started skipping because his stepbrother's success made him feel like a failure. Coffee dates that turned into lunches that turned into something else entirely. Silas had been whispering promises in her ear, security, stability, a brownstone in Beacon Hill, everything Leo was working toward but hadn't achieved yet. "I'm 32, Chloe had said when she told him. Her voice was calm, rehearsed. "I can't wait anymore for maybe. Silas is offering me now." The divorce took 6 weeks. Fast. Clean. She didn't ask for much because she didn't need to. Silas had enough for both of them. Leo signed the papers in a Starbucks on Newberry Street because he couldn't afford a lawyer's office. The barista who notarized the documents looked at him with the same pity he'd seen in Silas's eyes. 3 months later, Chloe and Silas got married at the Four Seasons. Leo knew because his aunt sent him pictures. She thought he'd want to see them. He didn't. But he looked anyway. Chloe in a dress that probably cost $20,000. Silas grinning like he'd won a trophy. 300 guests, an ice sculpture, a 12-piece band. Leo had spent that night in his new studio apartment in Allston. 500 square feet, a mattress on the floor, a drafting table he'd bought used on Craigslist. He'd ordered Chinese food and worked on a redesign of his Harborview proposal until 4 in the morning. Not because he had a client, because he had nothing else. You need to understand something about Leo. He wasn't born into architecture. He'd clawed his way there. His mother had been a cleaning lady. His real father had disappeared before Leo could form memories of him. When his mom remarried, Leo was 7. His new stepfather, Richard, came with money and a son. Silas was 9, already confident, already aware of his place in the world. Richard tried. He paid for Leo's education, put him through college. But there was always a distance. An understanding that Leo was the add-on, the bonus kid. Silas got the mentorship, the internships at the family company, the keys to the kingdom. Leo got tuition and a pat on the back. Leo's mother had been so proud when he got into Columbia's architecture program. She'd cried at his graduation, told him he was going to build things that mattered. That would last. She died 2 years later. Breast cancer, fast and vicious. Leo had been 25. Silas had paid for the funeral. Another debt Leo could never repay. Architecture had been Leo's escape, his proof that he could create something from nothing, that he could draft a vision on paper and turn it into steel and glass and permanence. He'd met Chloe in his first year working at Rothstein and Associates. She was a project manager, smart, organized, beautiful in a way that didn't need effort. They'd bonded over late nights and shared ambition. Or so he'd thought. "I'm going to have my own firm one day," Leo had told her on their second date. They were walking along the Charles River. Summer, warm, hopeful. "Something that builds for people, not just profit." "I believe you," she'd said. He'd believed her too. Now, sitting in his studio apartment with the divorce papers filed and his career stalling, Leo had a choice. He could break, or he could build. He chose build. The first 6 months were hell. Not dramatic hell, not movie montage hell, real hell, the kind that's boring and repetitive and makes you question whether you're just delusional. Leo kept his job at Rothstein and Associates. He needed the paycheck, but every night after work, he went home and worked on his own projects. Small residential designs, pro bono work for nonprofits, anything to build a portfolio outside the firm's name. He submitted proposals to every RFP he could find. Most didn't respond. The ones that did said no. He lost weight, not intentionally. He just forgot to eat sometimes. A co-worker named Priya noticed and started bringing him leftovers. She didn't ask questions, just left containers of curry and rice on his desk with a sticky note that said, "Eat." Priya was the only one at the firm who didn't treat him differently after the divorce. Everyone else either avoided him or asked how he was doing with that specific tone that meant they'd heard everything. The humiliation had spread. Chloe worked in the same industry. People talked. Leo stopped going to industry events, stopped networking. He couldn't stand the looks, the whispers. Poor Leo, lost his wife to his own family, can't even keep his personal life together. How's he going to manage a major project? But he kept working. 12-hour days at the firm. 6 more hours at night on his own designs. Weekends disappeared. Holidays meant more time at the drafting table. He wasn't running toward success. He was running from the memory of standing in that doorway, holding those papers, watching her leave. Then, 8 months after the divorce, Leo got a call. A small developer in Cambridge wanted to build a community center. $400,000 project, modest. But they'd seen Leo's pro bono work on a youth shelter and wanted him to design it. As an independent contractor. It wasn't the Harborview project, it wasn't even close, but it was his name, his vision, his responsibility. Then the post stopped. For weeks. When they started again, Chloe looked different. Thinner, tired, the photos were less frequent, less polished. One showed her in sunglasses at a cafe, captioned, "Needed some air." It was January, in Boston. Nobody needed air in January. They needed escape. Leo tried not to care. Mostly succeeded. He was too busy. Rothstein had promoted him to senior designer. His independent projects were gaining traction. Elena had become a regular collaborator. Then a friend. Then something more, though neither of them had named it yet. They just worked well together, understood each other, built things that lasted. If this story is hitting close to home, make sure you're subscribed. What comes next gets intense. The news broke on a Tuesday morning in March. Leo was in a meeting when his phone started buzzing. Text after text. He ignored them until the meeting ended. Then he checked. Silas had been arrested. Domestic violence. Aggravated assault. The details were ugly. Multiple incidents over several months. Neighbors had called police twice. The final incident had sent Chloe to the hospital. She'd suffered a miscarriage from the trauma. The baby had been 15 weeks along. Leo felt like he'd been punched. Not because he still loved Chloe. That had died slowly over the past 2 years. But because nobody deserved that. No matter what she'd done to him. No matter how she'd left. Nobody deserved to be hurt like that. The story exploded across Boston. Silas's family was well known. The arrest was public. The details leaked. Chloe's photos from the past year were suddenly recontextualized. Those sunglasses hadn't been fashion. They'd been covering bruises. That thinness hadn't been discipline. It had been stress and fear and survival. Leo's phone rang. His aunt. She was crying. "Did you see? Did you hear?" "I heard. That poor girl. And the baby. Leo, I'm so sorry. I know you two had history, but this is... I know." Leo's voice was flat. He didn't know what to feel. Anger at Silas. Pity for Chloe. A strange, guilty relief that he'd never been the man she'd wanted. Because maybe being less had saved him from becoming that. The trial happened fast. Silas's lawyers tried to negotiate. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, hospital records, text messages from Chloe to friends begging for help, but asking them not to tell anyone. Silas took a plea deal. 5 years, mandatory counseling, restraining order. The family disowned him publicly. Richard issued a statement calling his son's actions inexcusable and horrifying. Chloe disappeared from public view. No social media, no statements. She'd moved out of the Beacon Hill brownstone and into an apartment nobody seemed to know the location of. People whispered about her, pitied her. Some blamed her for not leaving sooner. Most just moved on. Boston society has a short attention span for tragedy, unless it's their own. Leo kept working. 3 months after Silas's arrest, Leo's independent firm officially launched. Not a side project anymore. A real LLC office space in the Seaport District. Small but legitimate. Elena had joined him as a partner. They'd hired 2 junior architects and a project manager. The work was coming steadily now. Residential, commercial, one small municipal project in Somerville. And then, on a Thursday afternoon in June, Leo got the email. The Harborview Development Committee was reopening proposals. The project had stalled under political pressure. They wanted fresh perspectives. And they'd heard about Leo's recent work. Would he be interested in submitting a revised proposal? Leo read the email 3 times. Then he called Elena. "We're doing this." "Doing what?" "Harborview. The project that got me rejected 3 years ago. They want new proposals." Elena was quiet for a moment. Then, "Let's destroy it." They worked for 6 weeks straight. Nights, weekends. They revised everything. Made it more ambitious but more feasible. Secured preliminary interest from sustainable material suppliers. Built a financial model that actually worked. Elena's structural innovations cut costs by 15% without sacrificing integrity. Leo's design balanced aesthetics with functionality in ways his original proposal hadn't. They submitted it on a Friday. The committee would take 8 weeks to review. Leo tried not to think about it. Tried not to hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope was what had made that first rejection hurt so much. But this time felt different. He'd earned this. Not through connections, not through family money, through work, through failure and rebuilding and refusing to stay broken. On a Sunday morning in August, 2 days before the committee's decision was due, Leo heard a knock on his apartment door. He'd moved to a better place in the South End. 1 bedroom, actual furniture, a kitchen where the stove worked. He wasn't rich, but he was stable. He opened the door. Chloe stood there. She looked like a stranger, thin, pale. Her hair was shorter, unstyled. She wore jeans and a plain sweater despite the summer heat. No makeup, no jewelry. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Hi," she said. Her voice was small. Nothing like the confident woman who'd handed him divorce papers. Leo didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. "I know I shouldn't be here," Chloe continued. She was looking at his chest, not his eyes. "I know I have no right, but I needed to see you, to apologize, to—" Her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, Leo, for everything, for leaving, for choosing him, for not seeing what he was until it was too late." Leo stepped aside. Let her in. Not because he forgave her, because turning her away felt cruel. And he wasn't cruel. That was the difference between him and Silas. Chloe sat on his couch. She looked around the apartment, at the framed architectural drawings on the walls, the books, the signs of a life built without her. "You're doing well," she said. It wasn't a question. "I'm doing fine. I saw the article about your firm and the community center. It's beautiful, Leo. Everything you said you'd do, you're doing it." Leo sat in the chair across from her, kept distance between them. "Why are you here, Chloe?" She took a breath. When she spoke, the words came fast, like she'd been holding them in too long. "I made a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life. I thought Silas was what I needed, security, success, someone who'd already made it. But he was a monster. He hurt me in ways I can't—" She stopped, composed herself. "I lost the baby, did you hear?" "I heard. I think about that every day. What that child could have been, should have been. And I think about you, about us, about how you never once raised your voice to me, never made me feel small. You were building something real, and I was too impatient to see it." She looked up at him finally, tears on her face. "I was wondering if maybe, now that enough time has passed, we could talk, really talk, about what went wrong, about whether there's any chance we could—" "No." The word hung in the air. Simple. Final. Chloe blinked. "No?" "No chance, no reconciliation, no going back." Leo's voice wasn't angry. It was calm, certain. "I'm sorry for what happened to you, I really am. Nobody deserves what Silas did. But that doesn't change what you did to me. You didn't leave because I was abusive. You left because I wasn't rich enough fast enough, because I was building instead of built. I was wrong. You were. But I'm not interested in being your backup plan, your safety net. The guy you come back to after the upgrade didn't work out." Chloe's face crumpled. "That's not fair." "Maybe not, but it's true." Leo stood, walked to his desk, picked up an envelope. He'd been carrying it around for 2 days, waiting for the right moment. This was it. "I got news yesterday. Unofficial. The Harborview project. The one I pitched 3 years ago when we were still married. The one you saw me present. I just won the contract." Chloe's eyes widened. $20 million project, 2 years of work, my firm's name on every document. It's everything I told you I'd achieve. Leo handed her the envelope. "But that's not why I'm giving you this." Chloe opened it with shaking hands. Inside was an invitation. Cream cardstock, elegant script, a wedding invitation. Leo and Elena. October 15th. A small ceremony at the community center Leo had designed. Reception to follow. Chloe read it twice, then looked up at him. Confusion, hurt, understanding. "Elena is my partner," Leo said quietly. "In the firm and in life. She believed in what I was building when it was just sketches and hope. She worked beside me, never asked me to be anything other than what I was. We're getting married the same weekend you and Silas got married. 3 years later. Seemed fitting. Leo, you told me you couldn't settle for less. I want you to know that I didn't either. I did everything I said I would do. Built the firm, won the contract, found someone who sees me as enough. I did it all without you, not despite you leaving, not to spite you, just because that's who I am." He walked to the door, opened it. I hope you heal. I hope you build a life that makes you happy. But that life doesn't include me anymore. Chloe stood. She was crying fully now. She walked to the door, stopped beside him. I really am sorry. I know. And he did. He could see it. But sorry didn't rebuild what had been broken. Sorry didn't undo choices. Take care of yourself, Chloe. She left. Leo closed the door, locked it. Then he stood there for a long moment, not crying, not celebrating, just breathing, feeling the weight of 3 years lifting off his shoulders. His phone buzzed. Elena. Committee just called. It's official. We got Harbor View. Leo smiled. A real smile. The kind he hadn't felt in years. I know. Just got confirmation. We should celebrate. I'm thinking champagne and spreadsheets. Perfect. He grabbed his keys, walked out of the apartment. The August sun was bright. The streets were full of people living their lives, building their futures, making their choices and living with them. Leo had made his choices too. He'd chosen to build, to endure, to become the man he'd promised he'd be, even when nobody believed him. Especially when nobody believed him. The Harborview project would break ground in 6 months. His firm would expand. Elena would become his wife. And somewhere in Boston, Chloe would rebuild her own life from the ruins of her choices. But Leo's door was closed now. Locked. Final. Because he'd learned something in 3 years of late nights and rejection and slow, unglamorous progress. You don't build an empire for revenge. You build it because creation is the only honest response to destruction. You build it because the alternative is staying broken. And Leo had decided, that day in the rain with divorce papers in his hand, that he would never settle for broken again. He'd told Chloe once that he was going to build things that mattered, things that lasted. He'd kept that promise, not just in steel and glass and architectural drawings, but in himself. And that was the only revenge that ever really mattered, the kind where you win by becoming exactly who you said you'd be. No compromise, no shortcuts, no settling for less. The door stayed closed, the future stayed open, and Leo walked toward it with the quiet certainty of a man who'd built his life from nothing and knew, finally, that nothing could take it away again. If you watched to this point, I want you to tell me where you are watching from and what you learned from Leo and Chloe's story in the comment section. But before that, let us build something here, a collection of people who appreciate stories like this. Every subscription moves us closer to 1,000 subscribers, and your name on that subscriber list matters. Will you be on it when we hit the goal? Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.